Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to tackle something that most people just think of as, trucks and warehouses. But what if I told you it's actually one of the most powerful financial engines in your entire business?
So let me just kick things off with a question for you. When you really think about it, where does the real financial value get created in your company? Like, what's the financial heart of the whole operation?
You might think, okay, it's got to be marketing, right? And look, they're absolutely essential for drumming up demand, no question. But are they the fundamental source of that financial surplus? Not really. Okay, so what about sales? The team that's out there closing deals, bringing in the cash. They're on the front lines for sure, but they're really just capitalizing on value that's already been built somewhere else. The real answer? Well, is probably not what you're expecting. Yep, it's in the supply chain. That whole complex web of partners and processes and all the moving parts. That's where incredible amounts of financial value can either be created or, completely destroyed. And in this explainer, we're going to show you exactly how to unlock it. All right, let's dive into the supply chain's big secret. And it's this. This isn't just about moving boxes from point A to point B as fast as you can. It's about a core financial principle that honestly should be guiding every single decision you make. And that principle has a name: supply chain surplus. It sounds complicated, but it's actually a super simple, really powerful idea. Just take the final price a customer pays for something. Now subtract every single cost that was incurred by everyone in the chain to get that product made and into the customer's hands. That number you're left with, that's the total pie. That's the value that all the partners have to share. So here's what that really means. The ultimate goal of modern supply chain management isn't just to make your one company profitable. No way. It's to make that total surplus, that shared pie, as massive as it can possibly be. Because when the whole pie gets bigger, everyone can get a bigger slice. It's that simple. Okay, so how do you actually do that? How do you make that surplus bigger? Well, it all comes down to pulling three very specific financial levers that give you a ton of control. And here they are, your controls: cost, capital, and risk. I want you to think of these as the three main dials you can turn up to tune up your supply chain's financial performance. So let's break down each one. First up, we've got cost. For decades, the big focus was on cutting costs inside your own company. But let's be honest, most of those easy internal savings, they're gone. The real game changer now is what we call inter-organizational cost management. It's about working with your partners to hunt down and stamp out costs across the entire network, together. Second lever, capital. This is all about the money, specifically how fast it moves through the system. We measure this with something called the cash-to-cash cycle. Basically, how long does it take from the moment you pay your suppliers to the moment you get paid by your customers? The shorter that cycle is, the less cash you have tied up and the healthier your business is. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. This chart shows a hidden opportunity that most people miss. Your big company, you can probably borrow money pretty cheaply, right? That's a low weighted average cost of capital, or WACC. But what about your smaller supplier? For them, getting a loan is way more expensive. They pay a much higher interest rate. And that difference, that's not just a problem, it's an opportunity we can actually solve. And this is where something called supply chain finance, or SCF, is a total game changer. Instead of just letting your small suppliers struggle with those expensive loans, you can use your company's great credit rating to help them get cash faster and cheaper. We're talking about tools like reverse factoring. The whole point is to shift the financial burden to the partner who can handle it most cheaply. The supplier gets the cash they desperately need, and you get a much more stable, reliable partner. It is a classic win-win situation. And that brings us to our third and final lever: risk. Look, every single strategic choice you make in a supply chain is, at its core, a financial bet. You are constantly trying to balance this desire for super lean, low-cost efficiency against the need for a resilient, shock-proof operation that can handle anything. And this slide just illustrates that trade-off perfectly. Relying on a single supplier, sure, it's often cheaper and way simpler to manage. But if that one supplier has a fire, a flood, any problem, your entire business can grind to a halt. On the other hand, using multiple suppliers costs more, and it's definitely more complex. But what you're really doing is buying insurance. You're buying resilience. There's no single right answer here. It's always a calculated financial decision. Okay, theory's great. Let's see how these three levers, cost, capital, and risk, actually play out in the real world. we'll look at one of the biggest decisions a company can make, whether to outsource its manufacturing to what's called a contract manufacturing organization or a CMO.
So, at a really high level, you basically have two main options. You've got a hybrid model where you outsource the actual production, but you handle the warehousing and logistics yourself. Or you've got full outsourcing, where your partners handle pretty much everything. And just look at the huge difference in how much of your own cash gets tied up in working capital. Let's dig into that a little more.
So in this first scenario, the hybrid model, you get to keep control over all your finished products, which is great. But, and this is a really big but, you are the one who owns all that inventory, just sitting in your warehouse. That's your company's cash, literally sitting on a shelf. And that directly hits that capital lever we were just talking about.
Okay, now let's flip it and look at the full outsourcing model. Here, the CMO makes the product, and another partner, a third-party logistics provider, or a 3PL, stores it and ships it. Now, from a pure capital perspective, this looks amazing, right? Your working capital needs just plummet because you're pushing the cost of holding all that inventory onto your partners. Financially, it's incredibly efficient. But there's always a but, isn't there? What's the price you pay for all this beautiful, wonderful financial efficiency? There is always a trade-off. The price you pay is control. By outsourcing everything, you introduce a whole new set of risks. The risk that maybe your partner starts cutting corners on materials to save a few bucks, or that a quality issue goes completely unnoticed until it's too late. This is what economists call opportunistic behavior. And believe me, managing that risk has its own set of costs. So you've just pulled that capital lever way down, but whoops, the risk lever just shot way up. All right, let's wrap this all up. The huge mindset shift here is to stop seeing your supply chain as just a cost center, a line item on an expense report, and start seeing it for what it truly is, a dynamic, living financial network. And that really brings us to the key takeaway of this whole thing. Everything we've covered, from managing costs across the entire network to optimizing the speed of money and making those calculated bets on risk, it all comes down to these three levers. Your ability to create real, lasting financial value, it completely depends on how skillfully you manage the interplay between them, not just inside your company, but across your entire network of partners. This is the new playbook. So I'll leave you with this question to chew on for your own organization. Is your supply chain just a place where you spend money, a cost center, or have you turned it into a strategic engine that actively creates capital and value for everyone involved? The choice really is yours. Thanks so much for watching.